If you are anything like me and are just worried that there are elected officials that are impacting conservation, well, you got a home here. Welcome to the Go Show, celebrating all things outdoors, this beautiful outdoor playground of a state that we live in. You can go ahead and share this out and like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Joining me today is Ed Sanchez for your Arizona Game and Fish Department. He is the Chief of Legislative and Governmental Affairs, meaning that there is this whole branch of our state government that is all about conserving wildlife, healthy populations of 820 plus species, and in all of the desert plants and all the good stuff that goes on out around our great state. And then there are people at our state capitol that just want to pass legislation, and they couldn't pass an 8th grade biology test. By the way, most of them would agree with me on that one. So it's the two really don't mix. Enter Ed Sanchez. Ed, what do you do for the department in working with the state legislature?
Well, hey, Mike, thank you for having me. And I basically represent the department and the commission down at the legislature and try to educate and inform legislators on wildlife issues, on things that they may make a decision on that may impact the department. And so I just try to really to be an advocate for wildlife and then issues, like I said, issues that come up at the legislature. We have to be in front of that to make sure legislators say, is this a good thing or bad thing? And we say yes or no, and hopefully get them to move in a positive way to support the department.
Because there's a lot of people don't understand the impact of that. There could be legislation on a solar farm somewhere, which I know that's dancing around in there. There's on a solar farm that might impact the some sort of habitat for, in this case that I'm talking about, mule deer. And they don't think about that. They just think, okay, we have a piece of land. This is where we're going to pass some type of legislation and make it to approve that. And then Ed, if I'm understanding this correctly, you've got to jump in and say, whoa. What y'all didn't think about was this, our biologists say this, our scientists say this, our archaeologists say this, and then hope and pray that they're like, okay, I hear you, Ed. Okay, we don't have time to talk about this
one. Well, yes and no. I mean, there are already groups out there like yourself that you're very aware of, all these different sportsmen and conservation groups that are way ahead of me. They're the real proactive advocates. They get out there, they're on the field, and when you see something like a solar field, they'll go to those key organizations like what it's a federal agency, BLM or something like that, or even the governor's office. They'll go and be advocates to say, here are the wildlife impacts. Please consider these before going forward. And that's kind of out of our realm because, there's positions we take about wildlife on lands, but all we can do is basically give advice on that. But for us, there's a ton of other issues that are happening on a regular basis at the legislature that keeps us very busy.
Well, that's good. Well, it's good to know that they're doing something. And let's be honest, elected officials don't have the highest approval ratings or opinion ratings out here in we the people land. So it's good to know. Okay, there's a lot of busy stuff happening, and there's a lot of movement, and movement is good, especially if it's the right movement. We'll get into certain pieces of legislation as we move forward. How big does your team have to be are there state legislators that think, okay, well, fine, that animal's going to be fine. Do we need to call in a biologist? Do we need to call in a conservation, one of the critter groups? What do we work with you? How does this all come? Or is it just Ed's going to go talk to him? Don't worry about it. We got this.
Yeah, well, I have a support cast of one, David Fernandez. So we go down there and we meet and talk daily and strategize as to how we approach certain issues and certain legislators. And obviously what we try to do is before even the session begins, we start advocating, finding our champions down at the legislature, finding supporters. And for the most part, members are very supportive of wildlife and wildlife management and,
right.
Department being the experts. It's just, and I would tell you that there was a little under 1,700 bills introduced. And so, yes, and that is the last few years. That's usually it's around 900 to 1,200 max. But the last few years, it's so many. The members are inundated so much that they can't keep up with it all. And so it's up to us to kind of tap on their door and remind them, hey, don't forget about wildlife, don't forget about these issues that may impact. So as they go down that process, we can help them understand how to vote, in support or in opposition of certain bills.
Okay. And this is Ed Sanchez. He, for your Arizona Game Official Department, the Chief of Legislative and Governmental Affairs. He works downtown with the House, with the Senate. And if you could for me real quick, Ed, let me know if I've got it right, because I've said this several times and God knows I probably screwed it up. There's a hierarchy legislatively. So obviously everything ends at the governor's desk. Everything ends at the governor's desk. Mm-hmm. But then there's the commission. So, and then there's the department, right? Is that the stack, top to bottom, governor, commission, basically tie in the rest of the crew?
Yes. Well, in every June, beginning June, we have an internal process. We consider all these bills or consider issues that may require problem solving at the legislature, right? So, does this issue need to go through the legislative process to resolve our problem or create a solution for us? And so we go through that process that we do as a department. And then once we identify them, we determine, if this is something we want to do for the next upcoming session. And then we present it to the commission, and the commission then reviews it. And before the session begins in January, the commission will determine whether we want to go forward with that certain issue. So there, because everybody knows, I hope they know, that commission is the policy head for the department. And so any issue that we kind of put forward to the legislature, the commission wants to know about and follow it, right? And then I think for mostly that, how can we help support this specific issue that you're trying to work with the legislature on? So those, and of course that goes to the commission, but also because we're an agency of the state and have oversight by the executive, we also send that information to the governor's office. So the governor will determine that we like this, we don't like this. And then at that point in time, usually what happens if the governor's office is not in support of something like this, we may just decide to maybe hold off on it, maybe wait till next session, find another way of solving the problem, or that way. But, there's a lot of issues out there that people are aware of, because we have, as you know, sportsmen, conservationists are very active. Yeah. They're the ones sometimes that are advocating for this. They may take it on their own and move it through the process also.
Okay, and by the way, I don't think it was common knowledge. That's why I'm so excited to have Ed Sanchez here on the show with me. I don't think it's common knowledge that the commission was I believe you called it the policy head of the department. I don't think a lot of people knew that. I think it just kind of went to the, and here are the five, and it just kind of goes up to somebody, that they're that involved. I mean, I know that. I just, because I work with them and I know these peeps, but I don't think it is common knowledge to we the people of Arizona how that actually works. And is that pretty common state to state?
No, it's not. There's a lot of different configurations on how a certain state wildlife agency works. And reviewed, we have a lot of autonomy, a lot of independence in regards to, how we make decisions, and versus where some other states really rely on the executive to make a decision, those type of things. So we're very fortunate in Arizona that we have this 5 board commission process to help us through. It's very efficient. We're finding out, just talking to other state agencies around the country, a lot of other states would love to have our type of system.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. All right, good job, Arizona. Well done. All right. Yeah. Ed Sanchez, Chief of Legislative and Governmental Affairs for your Arizona Game and Fish Department, and for you in the great state of Arizona. How hard is it in your position? And we'll get to some legislation here in a second. How hard is it in your position to just deal with the revolving door? Politicians leave, new elections, this and that. Every election cycle has to be, is it just like hitting a reset button, or you just kind of deal with the same team and who's kind of coming in next?
Well, it is kind of a reset button. And, when you've been in this business as long as I have, there's nothing I haven't seen that kind of startles me or anything like that. I find it quite challenging, but very satisfying in that, my background is that I'm kind of a political scientist. So I really quite enjoy these changing dynamics that go on. And so, and then how you approach it, how do you strategize, how do you, if we have an issue, how do we get it through this maze of different changes and dynamics going on in this political environment we have? Yeah. So even this year, we're starting to look at, usually the 1st of April is when you start seeing the candidates, what they're going to be doing, if they're going to run again or not run. And then we try to anticipate who we think is going to be returning, so we can start planning and strategizing for the next session. How do we approach these folks? Who are the new people coming in? What's the vote count? Is it going to change this year? I don't know if your audience knows, each chamber, the Senate is one vote. One vote on the majority of the Republican majorities have one vote majority on each chamber, so that can change quite easily. Sure. And it's almost could have changed the last few election years, but it hasn't. So people are looking at this. Is this going to be the year where the Democrats maybe have a majority in one of the chambers, or maybe even both? It's really an unknown. But
that has to be at least challenging to know that it should be this way in my mind. Yeah. So if I took over for Ed Sanchez today as the chief of legislative and governmental affairs, I've got it right every single time so far. I want to point that out, Ed. So far, I've got it right every single time. So if I took over for him today, I would go in and assume that we're starting with a point of agreement. No matter if it's Republican or Democrat, we're starting with a point of agreement: conservation, wildlife, the environment. Everybody should be on board with this, right? And it's probably not that way, because everybody's got their own agenda, whether they're an R or a D, they've got their own agenda, and it's got to be challenging with you. You're sitting there like, why can't you just agree with me? It's conservation.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the vast majority of the members, support wildlife management. The issue is how you solve the problem. I mean, they have different ways of solving the problem. Some people think, a stronger government role in managing is required, or some believe that maybe we should let the private sector, work on and allow this process to occur, whatever that may be. But it's really, everyone has a different way of looking at how to solve the problem, and so we have to go to them as subject experts, like you were mentioning, and say, well, we've looked at this issue and we believe this is the best way of moving forward on this. And then we have that storybook that we have to pull out to try to convince those members that this is the right way to go.
Sure, I bet. And again, we're dealing with legislators that chose a career of electoral politics, not of biology and conservation, not of science. These are elected officials. Some might have backgrounds in something similar, maybe farm, ag, maybe something like that. Or they might be outdoorsmen or women. But for the most part, that's there. I don't think a lot of people know that there are Ed Sanchez's in these states that are representing us in kind of bringing a voice of conservation in the ears of all of these elected officials. And I think it was surprising to me when I first met you, and I just think it's something cool that we have. And you're doing God's work out there, man. You really are. But can we talk about actual pieces of legislation that I'm confused about? And again, I'm not going to ask Ed to take one side or the other. You can talk about the department's recommendation. That's fine. But this isn't a Republican, Democrat. This is not a political show. So I want to talk, first of all, about OHV, off-highway vehicles. There's a piece of legislation that is proposing that we increase the weight limit of any sort of vehicle that is going to be considered OHV to 3,500 pounds. That's a lot. That's heavy. And again, I'm a conservationist, so I think about its impact on the desert, on the plants, on the streams, on the everything, the heavier you go. Who's behind this legislation? Why is it important? And why do we think we need to go from 2,500 to 3,500?
Well, Senator Carroll, who represents the West Valley, one of the districts in the West Valley, is the one who sponsored it. And actually, he sponsored it last year. It got all the way to the governor's office and was vetoed. And I think that, just to keep the answer short, I think there were still just some concerns about the weight. There weren't all the answers that provide the clarity that the governor needed to actually sign an approval of that. But the bill is it's what it does specifically is it allows a vehicle up to 3,500 pounds to purchase a Initia stamp, a resident or non-resident OHV stamp, and that allows them to go on certain trails. So let's say if it doesn't pass again, these same vehicles, like any other vehicle, you may have a Jeep or a dune buggy or something like that, who can go on all these trails throughout Arizona, without this stamp. Those vehicles can still do that. There's just certain trails that they cannot go on without a OHV stamp.
Okay. So if you do have a 3,500-pound vehicle, there are trails right now that you can go on.
Yes.
Okay. So
there's a lot of roads, Forest Service roads, things like that. So you can go on. These vehicles can do that, but when there's designated OHV trails, they're not allowed to go on without the stamp.
Okay. And then, so why it's kind of go with the Jurassic Park. You were too obsessed with, if you could, you never thought of if you should. So why is this necessary? What problem is this solving, moving it up, or at least what is being pitched? Excuse me. I'm not asking you personally, Ed, but what's being pitched by the elected officials that this is something we need to have happen. What's behind that?
Well, I know the industry is a big advocate for this. They want to be able to say to the people who purchase these vehicles that you can go anywhere, mostly anywhere, and travel throughout the trails throughout Arizona. I mean, that's one of the selling points, I think. And this is just Ed talking out, thinking through all this stuff. But this OHV decal, does take you in certain places, but there's so many other places you can go without the stamp. But this is important to them. I believe enough where they really are advocating for this. And, part of the big issue on this is bad behavior. I mean, really, the question is, can these vehicles that go up to 35 pounds, can the trails maintain those type of vehicles if they actually the drivers or the ones who are driving those vehicles act responsibly? I mean, that's the real big issue, and that's what we're finding out. It's those bad people with bad behavior that really are causing a lot of this damage. And how do we deal with it? And it gets back to this, more law enforcement on the ground, which has really kind of been the big talking point at this. If your audience didn't know, there was a OHV study committee created, and there have been numerous meetings prior to this session talking about how to resolve this bad behavior and some of the other issues, because we haven't. I think the last time we've actually made some changes in this statute is 2008. So and it's really changed a lot. I mean, the picture of what it used to look like and the users are a lot different than now. It's much more recreational use than it was in the past. And there's a lot of hunters that were using it, and a lot of ranchers, things like that. But now it's really gone to a bigger industry of outdoor recreation. So how do we make those changes legislatively to really respond to kind of all the changes in OHV?
Yeah, I think I know Polaris is out with it's a beast. It's essentially a small Bronco, and it's a car. I think when you say the industry, I think it's not just Polaris probably, but they want to go big. They want to go bigger. So basically the OHV SUV, and they wanted to, I don't know, take the kids to soccer and then hit a trail. I don't really know how. It's a little too much for me. I always think that the less amount, the smaller number of seats you can have in a vehicle, the more practical it becomes. That's just me. But but what a component you touched on there is that I don't know if it's a different piece of legislation or the same thing. And Ed Sanchez is with us. He's the chief legislative and governmental affairs cat there at Arizona Game and Fish Department, working with the elected officials down there. I do not know if it's the same piece of legislation, but there's an education component that people are up in arms about. Absolutely fired up about. I have heard somebody say, I've been driving for 50 something years. I'm not going to have somebody teach me how to drive an OHV. why would anyone be opposed to a game and fish video that you got to watch for 30 minutes before you can rent a side by side, any of these kinds of things? Why? How in the world? I am not for government expansion. Y'all know me long enough.
Right.
But okay, there is an education component here that can save lives, save the environment, save species. It can do it all. Education first.
Right. And, and I totally get the point. Again, we get back to the bad behavior is that, you'll have, and so what happens in this, if the legislation is passed, it's in Senate Bill 1567. And if it's passed, it will require everyone going forward, beginning of January of 2025, if you're anyone who purchases a decal, resident or non-resident, needs to go and do this video, which right now has not been created yet. We're still in that.
Right now.
Right. We have to create that video and that education course. But once we do that, I think one of the reasons why they did it was that because they're looking at all these different aspects of OHV, and it's a lot of change that needs to happen, a lot of moving parts. So I think one of the ideas was you may require everyone to do it, and it repeals in June of 2027. So basically 3 years from this coming June. So you have a universe of people purchasing these decals. You only have to take the education course once, and then you can continue to purchase your decal. But it gives a universe for some of the legislators to say, "Oh, I see. So we have X thousands of people purchase a resident decal, X amount in non-resident." So they can say, "Okay, it's generating this amount of revenue," and that's, I think, some of you folks know, it's $25 now.
Yeah. So
the question is, there's a cost to all this. Is there a cost to law enforcement, a cost to education? What is that cost? And so maybe they can, going forward in the future, determine maybe there's a need to raise the decal fee, to pay for some of this ongoing costs of OHV.
Suck it up, buttercups. It's needed. It really is. I mean, look, you know me, I'm an advocate of the Second Amendment. I celebrate firearm ownership, and I took a concealed carry course, which is not required here in the state of Arizona. And I learned more about what you can and can't do than I ever even imagined was out there. There is absolutely nothing. This is what I want to know on the opposition side, Ed, from the legislative standpoint, those that oppose this. How can you oppose people coming in and have never driven a side-by-side in their life, renting one for however much for the day, and going out and romping all over and destroying our deserts? How can you be opposed to that? What are you hearing?
Well, and so this is for people who purchase non-resident and non-resident decals, but there's no language that says that it requires anyone who rents OHV vehicle. So that's one of the lingering issues that did not get in the language. And at this point in time in the process, I think the sponsor, who's Senator Kerr, if they were trying, they're thinking that if it was added into this language, it would be too big of a burden, too big of a load, and the legislation would probably die. So we probably won't see that. But I guess the question is there what is happening right now currently with those renter facilities? Well, I know that the department created a video that there's some of those type of those renter companies require anyone who rents a vehicle from them to see that.
Perfect.
And so they're seeing great results from that. I mean, to the point where, again, this is voluntary for them, and they're seeing a big lot of results from damage to their own vehicles, liability. And so the idea is that, maybe we, provide that to other rental companies to show the benefits, and maybe it becomes voluntary. I know there's a big push on mandatory, but if we can get this all done voluntarily, why not do it that way? And if we get the same results, why not do that? But that's something that the legislature has to decide on. But I suspect it's not going to happen this session. it may return next session about making it mandatory, but maybe there's enough data out there to say, why don't we just allow this to continue voluntarily?
Sure.
If that's the case.
And one of the pieces, Ed Sanchez, the chief of legislative and governmental affairs, yours on the Game and Fish Department, is there a piece of it that had something to do with open container? Again, these are one of the things that we just are not slapping our forehead going, why isn't that already a law? And who is going to oppose this? I don't want everybody out there drinking while they're driving, 60 miles an hour on loose gravel and all. Come on now. Let's be real with you. Why is it part of one of these bills, or does it stand alone?
It's that same bill
Okay.
with the education piece, 1567. And I would tell you, it's big. I was there at the OHV study committee when they brought that issue up. People were very surprised. They were not aware that you could have an open container in an OHV. And so that was something that happened again, as you explore and discover these things that we haven't really talked about OHV laws or statutes. And these are things that were brought up during the study committee and said, okay, I think that's probably a good idea that we add that on to the list of things that, maybe we shouldn't have open containers. You can have the containers on the vehicle and you can stop at a place and have a picnic and, do that.
Yeah.
You can't have it open while you're in on the vehicle. So
it seems common sense, but okay. But I mean, this is always, you think of goofy laws, and Ed, this being the political scientist you are, the laws that you look at the law and you're like, somebody actually had to do this to be prohibited by law. Like somebody had to do something absolutely stupid. Like, these guys are out there, got one hand to the curse light and the other hand on the wheel. And it's like, you should know that's not right. You should just know right away that's not right. And I don't think any piece of senator or representative should oppose anything like that. What else is on the docket right now with our outdoor world, maybe OHV, boating, whatever it is? What else do we need to keep our eyes on?
Well, there's a couple other bills, or at least one specifically, Senate bill. I'm sure I get this right. I think it's 1052 by Senator Carroll. And excuse me, both these bills are being held so in a way where if it finally gets voted on the House floor, it'll move up to the governor and she can decide what she wants to veto it or sign it. But this bill specifically gives authority to the ADOT to create a remediation program and also a program to help fund a program for sheriffs for
Okay.
law enforcement on the ground. So that's actually something that's being discussed right now between members and the governor's offices. This is something that can be supported. And if it is, how can, like, for example, how can ADOT do something like this? So that's something that's being discussed right now. And that's kind of behind the scenes discussions.
It's important.
Yeah.
It is. And yeah, I've been an advocate since I've had this show, 11 years. I've been an advocate for licensing for OHVs. I was sharing the story. I had me at 13 years old and my dad's 19-foot Liberty jet boat just rolling around the lake. No. And I remember at the time thinking, how in the heck am I able to do this? I think I'm getting away with something, but I didn't, there's no laws for that. So, Ed, before I let you go here, we really appreciate what you do. I think that we have undersold what you do here on this program, and I hope you can come back and people can get a clearer picture as we go through, because when it comes to conservation, when it comes to wildlife management, we need to trust the experts, the pros, those on the ground, those that know, and there's the only thing between them and people that don't know that are making laws in passing legislation is Ed Sanchez and his team. So I do really, really appreciate what you do and keep fighting that fight, man.
Yeah. And if I can say, I'm just one person who represents a state agency. So sometimes it doesn't mean a lot to members, but it means a lot to hear from their constituents. And so there's a lot of sportsmen, a lot of conservationists out there that live in Arizona that have representation at the legislature. We need advocates when that time's right, and to go and talk to those members saying, this is the way you need to support this bill. This is the way you need to oppose this bill. We need advocates to help us get these good issues through.
Okay, now in your experience, Ed, and you can just shoot this straight to me. Does it work? We always hear, call your representative, call your congressman, call your senator, write email. Does that work?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. There could be, a certain strategy or certain method of how you do it, or a timing piece on this. But yes, absolutely. And I think we try to do our best to do that. So if we anticipate there's going to be an issue ahead, we may want to talk to a few people to say, and identify members who may be in that district for that member to do a timely call or timely email of some sort, a communication of some sort. That it does. I really believe it does. Not in every case, but in many
yeah.
cases, it can have an impact to at least slow it down. If not to allow that member to rethink maybe what they're deciding to do.
Well, I appreciate it. We appreciate you, Ed Sanchez, the chief of legislative and governmental affairs. I think I batted 1,000 on that. I told you I was going to screw that up 9 ways a Sunday. Ed, can you? And I know they're only convening 1 day a week at this point. And I know there's a lot of other very large pressing issues that they're trying to get done before they take off. But can you keep us updated? Just maybe shoot me a text, email, whatever it is, and come back on anytime and let us know what's going on down there.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of things. We have our own little game and fish bill that we're hoping it's right on the finish line. But with like I said, 1,600 more than 1,600 bills, and there's only been like 200. I think the governor's only like less than two. She's only passed less than 250 bills. So there's a big stockpile of bills, they're waiting to be passed and get through to the governor. So we're hoping our little bill gets through. We're not sure if it will.
Okay,
We may just run out of time.
Yeah, well, to keep us posted on that as well. And I mean, there's some vetoing going on up there. So we hope that it gets through and just okay, fine. Again, it's a commonality for every political party. It should be conservation, wildlife management should be a no-brainer, but it is electoral politics as well. So thank you for being the buffer between us and those folks, Ed, and get involved and just keep an eye on this, and we'll keep you posted right here on the Go Show. Have a great afternoon, everybody.